Hello, this is Hilary Robertson. Welcome to episode 30 of Harmonious World. This week I'm joined by pianist and composer Peter Manning Robinson, whose debut double album Double Helix is out now on Heart Dance Records. It's a very hard album to classify, and there's a very good reason for that. Half of it, so one CD, is dedicated to music performed on Peter's own invention, the Refractor Piano, and then half is acoustic solo piano. The two CDs are very different, but they work well together, which is why the album is called Double Helix. Peter is a renowned pianist and he's played with just about everybody. And in this podcast, he talks about working with filmmaker and producer Klaus Hock. It's very difficult to categorise Peter's playing, and especially using the Refractor Piano. But it is beautiful, beautiful music that I hope you will enjoy, and I hope you will listen to it once you've enjoyed our conversation. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, nice to meet you.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Peter. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm a little hoarse from running hills in the rain in sunny Los Angeles. Other than that, I am fine.
Okay, well, I have no sympathy for you because it's very snowy and icy here. Yeah. Thank you for joining me. This is for my podcast, Harmonious World. And I'm fascinated to talk to you about Double Helix. How did you come up with the concept of having the two discs that are so very different?
So when my collaborator, Klaus Hock, who directs and produces my videos, and he co-produced the album with me, we were talking about what we wanted to do. He was saying, well, Peter, your solo acoustic piano music is so different than the music that you play with your invention, the Refractor Piano, and yet it's still coming from the same person. And then he says, it's sort of like a strand of DNA, the two sides. Double helix, there we go. And so that's how the initial concept started.
Because they do sound like, well, initially they sound like two different albums. But when you break down the Refractor Piano, it's still you.
Yes, and as very similar to my acoustic piano work, I'm improvising, but I'm improvising on themes, and everything is live. So whether you're hearing just one piano or you're hearing this whole cacophony of sounds, it's still coming out of the same piano. And the more you listen to my music, the more you realize, oh yeah, this is the same guy. It's just he's wearing a different suit today.
Right. Is it the same piano and you
Yes.
just add? So it is. You just add the stuff.
Right. So if you, I don't know if you can see, here's my piano. I have very little furniture in my house. I have a very simple lifestyle, but I have 3 Steinway pianos. So that's my vice. So think of the Refractor Piano the same way you think of refraction in science. So that in science, when you have a wave, such as sound or light, it passes through a prism. The incoming signal is unaffected, but when it goes through the prism, it becomes refracted or morphed or changed. So that's what happens here. So my acoustic piano is completely like any other. If I go on the road and I have to play somebody else's acoustic piano, I can just hook up my invention to that piano. And everything is happening live. So there's no pre-recorded tracks, there's no MIDI instruments, there's no triggered samples. All of the sounds emanate from the piano itself.
Right. And so you said you have 3 Steinways, which is crazy.
This is.
But I think it's crazy in a good way.
I hope so.
Yeah. So you can just move the Refractor Piano device, your invention, between those pianos and between any other piano.
Yes. Now, because each piano sounds different, what comes out is different. So if I'm doing a concert in another city where I'm not taking my piano, this is of course remembering a time when there were concerts and one could travel to other places to play, then I have to spend some time getting to know that piano and making adjustments to see what it's going to sound like. But effectively, this is very true. So the invention itself is very small. It's a small little rack, and it's a little Mac Pro and some pedals, and it takes about an hour to put it on the other piano. Doesn't damage it at all, and then off we go.
Right. When you play live, you can't do half a gig on it without the refractor and half a gig with the refractor? It has to be either or.
Absolutely. When I do my concerts, that's pretty much what I do. Depending on the audience, I work a lot with not only with Klaus, who's a filmmaker and visual artist, but another person named Hannah Kim, who works with a lot of the operas domestically and foreign. And they have a whole series of visual effects that they improvise with while I'm playing. So I also tell stories, and I talk about my life and what's going on and how the pieces became developed. So I will always do, here's a refractor piano, now here's an acoustic piano piece, and I mix it up, and it just depends on the audience.
Wow. It does sound amazing. I really, I was thinking as I was preparing to interview you, I was sort of jumping between the two CDs to see which track I preferred. And actually, I prefer them all in different ways.
Tell me.
I think the Refractor CD. Secret Source and Fugitive Heart are definitely my two favorite. I don't know why.
It's not important why, we just listen and then we feel, and this is what we do.
Absolutely. And then I was going back to the acoustic piano and Undying Spirit. Oh, I love that. Where did that one come from?
So about 2 years ago, I was given a dog, and through my ex-girlfriend, and she's still my girlfriend. I shouldn't say that. We've morphed. We've refracted. In any case, she could no longer keep Coco, who's this little beast of an 8-pound Pomeranian. And I've never had small dogs, and it's like, no, I can't take a dog. Oh, come on, take it for 2 weeks. Everything will be fine. Well, the 2 weeks turned into 2.5 years. So everything's going fine. I'm getting acclimated. And then she gets hepatitis. And the dog is only 2 years old.
Oh.
And so now she's just deathly sick, and I'm having to take her to vet after vet after vet, and it's just daily stuff. And she can hardly get out of bed, and she hates getting her meds. And yet her spirit was just so strong. And so I remember one day she was just like sitting at my feet, just kind of looking at me like, come on. And she goes, and I thought, God, this undying spirit, she won't give up. And she didn't. And now, even though she still has remnants of the disease, she's like back to her normal self. And I'd have her here, but she decided to go into a barking fit. So I had to sequester her. But that's where that comes from. This just feeling, not just from animals and people, but look what's happening to the planet right now. We can choose to hate, and we can choose to be negative, or we can just say, no, this isn't good or bad. This just is. Now, how do we thrive under these circumstances?
Wow, that's fascinating. You strike me as somebody who is very spiritual and in touch with the planet in the deepest sense, I think. We are both vegans, which is great. How long have you been vegan?
Uh, almost my whole adult life. And I remember the exact moment when it happened. Another girlfriend at the time said, I want to go to the zoo. And I'm thinking, oh God, I was hating like zoos and all of that. I said, all right, I'll go with you. So we're standing at the outside of the zoo waiting to get tickets. And this chicken walks up to me. And this chicken, I don't know what spirit or entity was in this chicken, but this wasn't a normal chicken. And the chicken started talking to me. And I walked over to a little bench and I sat down. The chicken walked over. It was like, and I couldn't look at this chicken as food. This was like a sentient being. And from that point on, I said, I can't do this. And then I started doing research. And at that time, John Robbins' book, Diet for a New America, had just come out. And I was so affected by not just the idea of what it's doing to animals, but what it does to the planet, the economic, the environmental. And here's a guy who is an heir to a multi-million-dollar fortune who says, no, forget it. And he walks away and he goes to Vancouver Island. He lives on practically nothing and raises his family, way before there was any indication that this was going to be such a worldwide trend. And so then I found like, well, God, I'm trying to eat vegan, but if I go out, I hate this food. It all tastes like cardboard. Now what do I do? So then I started learning how to cook, and I developed recipes, and then I started growing my own food, and it just became part of my straight edge lifestyle that I have, which is, no drugs, no alcohol, no tobacco, vegan. I exercise like a demon, and I'm happy. That's the thing. That's what I try to tell everybody when they say, why do you do it? I said, well, I lived my life a certain way for a period of time. I live my life now this way. I feel better. I'm happy. Why would I not want to do this?
Right. I feel exactly the same. And I've become quite passionate about the planet and how we can stop being so wasteful and all of that stuff. And I frantically collect litter everywhere I go and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm absolutely with you on all of that.
How long have you been vegan?
On and off since I was 20. I was a sax player and I played in a pop band, and there were two camps. They were either, meat eaters and, everything else, or they were pretty much vegan. And I sort of went to that. That seemed to make sense to me, to be vegan. And so I've been doing it mostly since then, but every now and then I'll sort of veer off a little bit. But now I'm completely, for about the last 8 years, I've been completely vegan, no alcohol. I've never smoked, so I've just really been living clean. And like
That's
you,
great.
I feel very happy.
Yeah, once you get all that other stuff out of your system, you just see things differently. And as you said, when it happens for us as individuals, we cannot help but look at the bigger picture. What's happening with the family? What's happening with our friends? What's happening to the planet? And I will say I have mixed emotions about how being plant-based has become so commercialized, and you've got all of this chemically grown food, which I'm not so sure is any better than the other stuff. But I understand it because it takes a long time to cook correctly if you're vegan. It's not like, okay, put the chicken in the oven. Okay, it's done. There's all
Right.
these other things that you have to create.
But actually, just as musically, there's something about the creation process, which I think is part of the love of food, is also the love of music. It's the same thing.
Absolutely. When people say, where do you get these ideas? I say, it's the same place that I get my ideas for my music. I can be playing and coming up with a new composition, and all of a sudden, that would taste great. I could do this and this and this and this and this, and that becomes my new recipe. Or I'm running in the hills and all of a sudden it's like, that's the issue. That's what I can do. And Da Vinci worked this way, Chopin worked this way. They would torture themselves like, it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. Okay, I'm getting the hell out of here. They would leave, and within 100 yards, it would be like, that's the answer. That's what I needed to do.
Yeah.
So I advocate very strongly, less thinking, more feeling.
That's fantastic. So I looked at one of your videos on Instagram, and you were talking about creation and the creativity, and one of the things that you were talking about was transcribing your pieces that you play for on acoustic piano for other people to play.
Yes.
How is that project going?
Well, right now, because I'm having to finish a couple of other projects, it is still conceptual, but I'm hoping within the next 2 weeks, once I finish what I'm doing right now, to start it. And it's a very interesting thing because I've come up with a way, since every time I play a piece, yes, the theme is the same, the motif is the same, the concept is the same, but it's constantly changing. So then you say, well, all right, how can I impart this to let's call him a legit classical player who wants to play my music, but doesn't improvise and doesn't think that way? So how can I create alternative sections and different ways of approaching the things? Because it's not jazz, and it's not classical music, and it's not Penderecki who does art pieces and then he has an orchestra that works with him for 20 years. So it's been an interesting way conceptualizing it so that, okay, this is what I can do. And then hopefully in the next month, I'll be able to start it.
Brilliant. So how have you found lockdown?
Well, one, I find it fascinating if I think of this in a spiritual way. If this had happened 10 or 15 years ago, lockdown would be completely different, and I think the number of people that would really, really suffer would be so much greater, simply because not only did social media, it was in its infancy, but Zoom and all of these other forms of communicating wouldn't exist. So I grew up, let's say, very differently. I'm a sexual abuse survivor. I was on the streets when I was 12, but I was also touring when I was 12. I've been playing since I was 3. And so many people would say I've had a hard life, but I say, no, I've had a life. And everything that has happened to me has created who I am and how I play and how I see the world. So I see events not as good or bad. They're just events. Now, how do you adjust to them? How do you thrive in a situation like this? So it forced me to be more active on social media. It forced me to go inward in certain ways. But other than not being able to do concerts, I still create my music exactly the way I do. I can't, if I need other musicians to do it, okay, great. I go online, they send me stuff, I work with it. I communicate with friends. Each year, the only party I ever have is New Year's Eve, where I invite my close friends. So this year we had a Zoom New Year's Eve party, and everybody laughed and had a great time. And this is something that we have to do. Maybe you're like me, and I believe that in a certain way, the planet has said to us, screw you. You have been abusing me long enough, and now I'm fighting back. Other people say it's this, other people say it's that, but it doesn't matter. These are stories we tell ourselves. It's what we do with the thing. So I don't think about it. It's just, okay, I wear a mask, I take care of myself, I make sure that my immune system is bolstered by, tons of herbs and supplements and healthy plant-based food. And you go on day to day. You don't let it upset you. That's right. How I'm dealing with it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's really interesting to talk to you. So tell me about the recording process for Double Helix. How long did it take? What order did you do things? How did you play around? How did it work?
Okay. So have you seen any of my longer form concert videos? Did you see any of
No.
those? Okay. I strongly urge you, go to my website and look at some of those. Not only I think you will find them fascinating, but you'll see a very different side of me where the compositions are much more developed and in conjunction with some of the visual images. When we started working, we were talking with a few different record companies. And Klaus had this concept that because so much of my music tends to be very highly developed with longer forms, a lot of bigger builds, crescendi, diminuendo, all of these different things, he said, no, let's do a record where it's very closely contained, that one can listen to it, but if they put it on in the car, they're going to feel good about it. And I said, well, I don't do that. And then as soon as I said that, I said, okay, great. I just said why I should do it. And then we met with a few different companies. And then we met with Heart Dance. Heart Dance heard a live demonstration. I played some things and they said, well, this is fantastic, but I mean, you're obviously a genius, but we don't know what to do with it. We said, okay, what if we were to modify it a slightly? And they said, yes, we'd like to hear some of that. So the way I worked was that I started with the Refractor music, and Klaus, I would send a piece to Klaus, and the agreement that we had, because we were co-producing it, I've never done this, given that much control over to somebody before, but if he didn't like it, we didn't use it. If I didn't like it, we didn't use it. So then I would send him sections, and he'd go, no. Oh, that little piece I like. So, okay, great. So I work on that. And I totally surrendered to that process because he wouldn't, because the agreement was he would never reference any other musicians or pieces of music because I never listened to anybody. And he would never compare it to anything else I do. He would just say, I like, I don't like. And after we did 5 or 6 of them, I started seeing, oh, this is what he's going for. Oh, I see. And all right. So then I'd go back and do them. And then after we got the Refractor pieces done, I started doing the acoustic piano pieces, and the same process, which is, okay, can't be too fast, can't be too slow, can't be too big, can't be too small. And within this little constraint, how far can you take it? How deep can you go into the creative process? And then we had an album, and then it was supposed to come out in March, and then kaboom hits, and we said, well, okay, now we got to wait. But in the meantime, it gave me so many ideas for new things that I'm working on now. So that's kind of how the process works. One thing I will mention is that inventing an instrument that's never existed before and a way of playing, because if you watch me play and you see my videos, you're going to see me playing inside the piano. I use mallets. I sing into the mic while I'm playing and process that. I do all these different things that are fairly unconventional. And you're sort of creating a new group of people to play with, oh, here's a new friend, I can do this. Oh, here's another new friend. Oh, look what I can do with this. And it's like having a bunch of me's kind of, sometimes they squabble, sometimes they get along great, then you come to sort of the meeting of the heart and everything works.
That's amazing. It sounds like an incredible process. And I think it's interesting working with, you're obviously a collaborator. You obviously you enjoy working with other people. Do you?
I love working with other people if they are open to what I do. You said you played saxophone?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with a jazz saxophonist named Ernie Watts.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So Ernie is my oldest friend. I met him when I was 11 years old for one of my first road experiences. So Ernie's normal orientation is kind of straight ahead jazz, right? And he's a master at it. But he loves coming over to my place, and we record pieces where he will play, and I'll refract him live while he's playing. And he'll play into the piano, and then I process that while we're playing, and then he moves away. And because he's open to that, so I'll have him do whole pieces where he'll just play the saxophone mouthpiece, not the saxophone itself. And he likes being challenged. There's a brilliant Brazilian rapper, quite famous in Brazil, named Pregador Luo. And he heard my stuff online, and he says, "Oh man, we got to do something." So I send him a track, then he sends me something. And so like, it's a whole other world, hip hop, but as long as people are open, I love it. If people say, no, here are the rules and you have to follow that, I said, no, that's not so good for me. So I kind of pick and choose what I want to do.
That's brilliant. One of the musicians that I miss, that I wish I'd seen, is Miles Davis. And I think he changed in and out and did different things. I mean, it was all jazz, but he sort of moved across, around and about, and worked with different people and things. And I love that concept.
Can I give you a story about that?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So as I said, I was touring when I was very, very young. And at the time, there was a club in Los Angeles where, when I was 13, I was asked to be the house pianist in a band. And all of these wonderful, fantastic musicians used to come in, including Miles. And his pianist at the time was Herbie Hancock. And the band didn't really like me too much. And they were constantly saying, you got to change this, you got to play this, you got to play that. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And so one time the band basically walked off the stage while I was playing. And I'm like 12, 13 years old. And, I'm very mature, but I'm still like this little kid who gets crushed easily. And Herbie walked over to me and he says, don't listen to anybody. You've got an original sound. You're going to be great. Just keep going. And then Miles kind of walks by and goes, mm-hmm, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I've always been kind of surrounded by angels at times, like when I'm on the streets, I was protected by Black Panthers, who said, I don't care what your skin color is. We love your music and we want to help. And I've just seen the world that way, like you go through and you stay open and things happen. And when you need encouragement, you get encouragement, when you need a kick in the butt, you get a kick in the butt.
That's amazing. One of the things that I've really enjoyed about doing this podcast is that I've spoken to lots of different musicians who, they're classical or they're jazz or they're folk or they're rock or they're whatever. And yet for most of them, they don't pigeonhole themselves, because why, who needs to? And I think you're a fine example of that. Actually, because the only people that need to pigeonhole your music are the people that sort it either in a record store or, on, heaven forbid, Spotify and those sort of things. They're the only people that need to classify something.
You're absolutely right. And in fact, one of the things that has been so difficult for us as we put out this new form of music is that the moment you go into the world of online, and even with the record company, they want to know, what do you call this music? What genre is it? And now you have to pick one. It's sort of the difference between like writing an essay in school or doing multiple choice. Well, I'd much rather do the essay because multiple choice locks me in, or as you said, pigeonholes. So it's that part of it's been very frustrating. And so I do my best to, when I speak to people, it's not educating, it's just allowing them in to see my world and to see things not as these rigid columns, but it's floating constantly like water or air. And it's a horrible thing that's happened to so many people. There's a Japanese saying, the nail that sticks out must be hammered in. And that's what happens to so many of us,
Right.
You stray from the beaten path and whap, So I said, go ahead, hit me. It's not going to change anything. I'm going to still do what I do.
Right. And that's the opposite of what a lot of people do, which is kind of go, right, I'm going to conform. I'm going to, a lot of music is kind of copying. it's kind of going, this works, therefore I'm just going to replicate it.
Well, especially now, because with all the algorithmic music programs and libraries, and nobody learns how to actually play music, And if you're out of tune, you go do auto tune. If you don't know how to play a chord, no problem. You buy this little program and it creates the chords for you. But what people don't understand is that there's somebody behind that. And so everything that you're doing is emanating from the person who created that program. And it becomes so frustrating when I talk to people who have actually not sat down and played a real instrument. They don't understand, like, what happens when you put the embouchure in your mouth and you go, boop, beep, as opposed to you push a plastic key down and there's the saxophone. Well, it's a type of saxophone, but it's not that vibration that shakes through your body.
No.
And that changes everything.
Indeed. Absolutely. I could carry on talking to you forever. It's been absolutely fantastic, really interesting talking to you. And I will be keeping an eye on your website, because I don't care if I have to fly to LA. When you start performing live, I'm going to come and hear you, because I really want to experience what you do on stage. Really do.
Oh, thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks.
That was such a joy to interview Peter. Was amazing, and he was very kind when we had finished, and said that he'd enjoyed it too, which was really nice to hear. This is somebody who has played with Miles Davis and Herbie Hancock. I just want to say how much I'm enjoying doing Harmonious World. I hope you are enjoying listening. Please subscribe. Please leave me a review. You can also buy me a coffee by clicking on the Buzzsprout website and leaving me a small donation. That would be great. But thank you for listening. Please let me know what you think. And find me on social media. All the links are on the website. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much for listening to Harmonious World. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.